Yes, thank you very much. Do you listen? Me? Yeah, no, it becomes louder. Yes, Ian Roberts. Ian, thank you very much for the introduction, and I think the presentation will be quite different to yours. In what is the difference between Ian and Jan? For example, that Ian is a native speaker in English, and I am not. Now I will start with my presentation. The title is "The Bioeconomy as a Driver of Sustainable Rural-Urban Economic Linkages." And it was given to me. It's a given title, and I've been thinking about my possible contributions. And I will concentrate on the linkages and give you a specific story, but it is not a. It is a story I experienced as a journalist. That is, in the last decade, 2018. I've been working as a science journalist in Frankfurt, Germany, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, and invited by a foundation. It was possible there for us to cover one whole year about the bioeconomy, about the food systems. And what we did was we visited a specific rural village in Zambia for several times during a year, and we compared the social, technological processes contributed to harvests and to food harvests to a European, quite technologically quite developed farm. This is the one part of my presentation. The other is derivated by what I'm doing since 2021 at a University of Applied Sciences in southwest of Germany. There I'm a person as a professor who links the world of agricultural value chains, like straw, for example, hemp, and miscanthus and whatever, with usage in construction, so in architecture, in, innovations in construction materials. Now maybe you are surprised what's going to come. First, the title, and with some more abstractions, while during this morning speakers have been talking about resilience and sustainability. Now we switch to bioeconomy. As Markus Vogt, he was a member of the Bioeconomy Council in Bavaria, very briefly defined the bioeconomy as the innovative part of sustainability. It's a very short definition. I like it quite much, and it fits to our conference. I always perceive the bioeconomy as like kind of an apple with a green and a red part, and there are two bioeconomies for me in terms of two narrations. The one is the optimistic one and realistic one concerning the contributions of technology and innovation towards sustainability. And this is represented by biotechnology and the faculties for agriculture and forestry and plant breeding. But the other part of the apple is the red part of the apple is a history of thought, more academically, more rooted in economics, but in critical segments of economics. Nicholas Rogesco-Rögen, 1960s and 1970s, who looked at the peasant economies as a distant mirror, reflecting our ways of life, and it was quite pessimistic view about progress and high energy usage and so far. So quite different worlds. I want to start with as I started with my presentation with a view back in the year of 2018, where I met this very nice person, Felix Kangwa, in the northeast of Zambia. And he is one of those hundreds of millions of peasants, so-called smallholder farmers, and he owns 3 or 4 hectares. It's quite a big smallholder farm, and I want to tell you about him in terms of linkages, social, economically, and linkages in terms of material streams, harvests, and where the harvests go to. He harvests cassava and wheat and maize and fruits and different kinds of food. He is not poor in land, as mentioned, but poor in technology and poor in capital and poor so dislinked from a monetary economy at all. He harvests among others, as mentioned, also so-called groundnuts. I don't know why, but peanuts are called groundnuts in Zambia, as I learned. So groundnuts, some dozens of kilograms per year. And what he does with the groundnuts is he hitchhikes with trucks to the capital. That is 12 hours away by the truck, and that's why there a market economy exists. So he can sell his harvests for money, $1 for a kilogram, and he hitchhikes back. And what you see, and many of you might know that, Louisa knows it very well, and all of you who are dealing with development cooperation knows those pictures, like 300 or 400 kilometers on the street, children and people are sitting and try to sell harvested products like tomatoes or like groundnuts in that season. As a problem concerning sub-Saharan Africa, one have to mention that the average farm size decreases for decades. This is a fact, a critical fact, where Philip Ernie, for example, puts his finger on and say, well, no one speaks really about this problem. So farms should become bigger for development, like also Esther Boserup has mentioned, and that happened in parts of Asia, and it is not happened in sub-Saharan Africa. When you read the papers containing advices for governance, supporting of small and medium enterprises across the whole value chain is advised, and I want to put a focus on those 2 points. Now I switch from the groundnut to the cashew shell as an example for existing value chain cooperations, and I think successes in this value chain could be adapted for the case of the groundnut, and might be fruitful for people like Felix Kangwa. And we are speaking here also about stability, about resilience, about migration issues and so on. So, but I come to that connect those aspects later. What could a cashew nut become? Questions like those are asked by bioeconomists, and it not only could become, but de facto it becomes, for example, biobitumen. Pointer, biobitumen, and that is one of, among others, a interesting business case, or for people like me, interesting because it can be used as a construction material, and the construction industry at all, as you might know, contributes more than a third to the global CO2 and equivalent emissions. construction and the usage of buildings. Bitumen is a bio-based binder using the property of the phenol-rich shells of the cashew nut, not of the fruit, but of the shells. So it's a byproduct. And there is no competition with the usage for food purposes, for nutrition purposes. And many worldwide, many cities, municipalities, or the airport of Frankfurt, for example, could find many of examples like that are currently testing such biobinders in biobitumen as a binder, and as scientific life cycle assessments found out that CO2 equivalent emissions can be reduced by around 50%. Not only because of this, that the substitution of fossil-based via bio-based materials, but also because of the better properties. The lifespan is longer because the bio-based bitumen improves the fatigue and resistance and toughness of the asphalt of the streets or whatever. And it enhances the aging resistance of modified asphalt. The whole market worldwide, to give some figures, is more than $3 billion currently for cashew nut based oils, and it is expected to double in the next 10 or 9 years. I am dealing as a teacher and as a researcher with the bioeconomy of buildings, as I named it, bioeconomy of construction materials. It is not a segment or that has been very central in the focus of bioeconomy. No, it has not been for a long time, but there are many of examples that promise to become relevant business cases. Bacteria-based bioplastic is one of them, engineered timber, more and more able to substitute bearing materials like steel, but also innovations make it possible to use second class or third class wood for as a load-bearing material. This is a straw bale-based house substituting concrete. That might make sense for some purposes, for others not. 3D printing and micelle-based insulation materials, for example, are just some examples. Or as in ETH Zurich here, a lab is specialized on functionalizing wood, making it, for example, some modifications on the nano level make it possible to use wood in parts as a material, can substitute glass. Questions for bioeconomists of buildings are, for example, is there enough material available? And this answer is very, very different depending on the material. For the case of the straw, as a agricultural-based building material, scientific forecasts or calculations answer yes, plenty of it. For example, and this is the demand, not based on the actual demand for building straw, but for the question, what would be if all in the whole European Union, if all new built buildings, new construction and renovation would be based on straw as much as can be used technically. Not for substituting steel, for example, concrete in all cases, but as much as might be used technically. And the answer is, sorry, now the slide disappeared. And that would be, in that case, the demand in the whole European Union, and so much land would be so much would be available for construction purposes, given the actual agricultural land used for cereals production. So plenty of straw. We're very rich in straw. Coming back to the cashew nut. Now this is the beautiful cashew fruit. And to come back again to linkages, while straw might bring linkages, as this example shows, in European, for example, a North German rural village, and farmers deliver the straw, and the community, the municipal village, it builds a new house for public purposes out of these straw bales. And so this is an example for a very local linkage in the social sense, also in the social sense, not only economically. But the cashew nut is not such an example, because 94% of the cashew nuts are harvested in Western Africa, Ivory Coast and Ghana, and most of the harvests, and in Asia, 40% in Africa, and 43% in Asia, and most of them are consumed in China, US, and Europe. So there are globalized linkages that can be represented economically and in the material streams, like in the Sankey diagrams. And that is a problem in the social sense. Here I put a picture of a peanut butter named It's Wild, and It's Wild is a Zambian corporation, hundreds of stakeholders like traders, logistic companies, processors, exporters, also policymakers, but mainly the farmer unions, not 100,000 of farmers, but farmer unions are part of this corporation. And there are many others named Grow Africa in South Africa, or Casanova in, yeah, strange, yeah, in Nigeria. And they try to be innovative also in a social sense. That means that people like Felix Kangwa, and I introduced him to you, are not excluded. That's my main point, are not excluded, because they are excluded in conventional value chains. I'm coming to an end soon. They are excluded. Why? First, because they don't produce enough quantities. Second, they don't can document the demanded qualities in terms of many aspects. They are not included into the conventional value chains. I switch to Kangwa as the last slide. And this is the point I want to make with my presentation. I could imagine that innovations, value chain innovations could progress to include those millions of peasants by using, for example, the shells, the byproducts, but also the products themselves. Sustainability is a double-sided sword because of sustainabilities as put in metrics and numbers and figures. It forces him to be able to document them. He is not able. He has not even a smartphone. He did not have 6 years ago. I don't know. The current situation might be different. But that is a problem, and so I have been speaking about a material technical innovation coming on the field is still stimulating startups and producing business cases. I've speaking about the reality of production. More than 30 million people in Africa alone live from harvesting and producing cashews. And I presented a definition of innovation that is a social and a value chain innovation that might include people like him to increase resilience of question mark of what we can discuss about it. Thank you very much for your attention.